Hey everyone, it's Ben Hardy here, and in today's video we're going to be going over the manufacturers that did a really good job last year with selling vehicles and the ones that didn't. And with all that being said, let's just get right into the video. So first off, we're going to go over some specific brands that did really well last year and the ones that didn't do so well. And then we're going to get into certain vehicles that actually did pretty well last year, and then same thing with vehicles that didn't do quite so well. But then we're going to cap things off with why these numbers are the way that they are. So first off, Toyota actually led sales for 2021. And again, 2021 is pretty crazy with all the shortages and everything. They sold over 2 million cars. And so this is the first time since 2009 that Toyota has been the number one automaker. They were up 10%. Ford, on the other hand, was down 6.5%. Chevy was down the most, 18%, and we know why that happened, right? Because GM in general had just so many issues with microchips, getting the wrong microchips and all that kind of stuff, and so yeah, they definitely suffered quite a bit. Honda was actually up 8.2%, and then Nissan was up 12%. Jeep was down 2.1%. Hyundai was up 19%. Kia was up 20%, and then Ram was up 3.6%, and then Subaru was down 4.6%. And these were the top automakers in the US. I'm sure a lot of you guys are wondering why Tesla isn't on this list, because Tesla did amazing last year. They sold almost 1 million cars, but that was worldwide. In the US, they didn't sell enough to get on this list. But here's the big takeaway from this list is notice all the manufacturers that are really high up on the list in terms of their percent increase to 2021, where they actually had a really good year where they were in the positive versus being in the negative. And most of those manufacturers are associated with reliability. Toyota, right, is associated with reliability. Honda is associated with reliability. Hyundai and Kia, I know some people might say they're not necessarily associated with reliability, but they have really strong warranties, and so that kind of helps with that. Nissan, same thing. Again, I know some people might be over the fence, but again, Nissan's got really good warranties. But all of them are obviously also Asian automakers, and generally, again, that's associated more with reliability and robustness. The only one that doesn't fit that general theme is Subaru, that also fits in that category, but they went down in sales a little bit. And then obviously Ram went up in sales, but it's an American manufacturer. And so here's what I think really happened is obviously the manufacturers that went up in sales were able to manage the whole microchip issue a little bit better than the manufacturers that went down in sales year to date. But the other thing that I think that really was kind of happening is people are just buying whatever they could get a hold of. And so if you look at, again, across the board, everyone's having issues with getting these microchips, but everyone has, enough to build a certain amount of vehicles. And so there's going to be a certain amount of vehicles in the market. And since there are more buyers than there are vehicles right now, people are going to be buying up everything. And so brands like Hyundai and Kia, which I think have made huge improvements over the last few years, still, aren't necessarily people's first pick. Some people they are, but other people they aren't necessarily their first pick. But then if you're shopping for a new car and you want a new car and you go to the Ford store and all their cars are sold out, for example, you go to the Jeep store and all their cars are sold out, but then you go to the Kia and Hyundai store and they still have options, right? Then you're probably going to buy from the manufacturer that still has options. So I think that there's a little bit of that that went into things last year with people buying whatever was available. And so the manufacturers that might have had lots full of cars in the past and were just giving them away and just trying to get sales, then we're actually benefiting in this seller's market, to where people are just going to buy whatever is out there. And then, like I said, I feel like people definitely put reliability at their forefront of purchasing this last year, because there's a lot of uncertainty with when vehicles are going to be able to be produced at a larger amount, and so people are probably thinking they're going to have to hold this vehicle for a lot longer. So again, they're going to place reliability at the top of their list in terms of buying a vehicle. So yeah, obviously there's just so many things that go into play, but I think that that's kind of the main stuff, right? Is people are more focused on reliability. Some manufacturers handled the microchip shortage better than others, and then on top of that, right, people are just going to buy what is available, and some manufacturers that normally would have lots full of cars where they're unable to sell them are just selling everything, right? People, if there's a new car out there, people will buy it at this point. Now, here's the next interesting stuff. So first off, pickup trucks. So Ford was down 7.8%. Ram was up 1% with pickup trucks. Chevy was down 11%. Toyota actually sold a ton of Tacomas. They were up 5.7% with those, and then GMC was down 1.6% with the Sierra. So Ram again passed Chevy in 2021 for pickup truck sales. They sold more than Chevy, which is pretty awesome. And then Toyota sold more Tacomas than GMC sold GMC Sierras, which is pretty interesting. Ford still holds first place with the most trucks sold, 726,000, which is quite a bit off. I mean, their like peak where they're selling like 900,000 F-Series trucks. So that is definitely a big decrease from the previous years. But again, it seems like, the one that's up the most, right? The Toyota Tacoma is a simple vehicle, reliable, robust. It doesn't need as many microchips, I assume, compared to something like a Ford or a Ram that has a bunch more going on with it from a technological standpoint. And so I think that, again, buyers were kind of going towards reliability, and then obviously that automaker was able to produce more trucks because they're more simple. The next one is not as interesting, so we're not going to spend too much time on it, and that's minivans. What the biggest takeaway from this is that the Toyota Sienna sold in astounding numbers. So they sold over 107,000, which is up 152%. Just absolutely insane. None of the other manufacturers even came close to that. Kia with the new Carnival pretty much had to like discontinue the vehicle, and so they didn't get to sell as many as they thought they originally would. The other one that's interesting now is with muscle cars. The Challenger actually sold better. The Mustang and the Camaro were both down. The Camaro was down substantially, 26%. And I think the reason the Camaro is down so much again is Chevy's overall issues with getting microchips. But then also, I think it's kind of lost popularity since they did that new kind of like front end styling, because it seems like people kind of like the previous version of the Camaro more than this newer version of the Camaro. And also with the Dodge Challenger, there's just so much. It's like a daily drivable car, but then on top of that you have high performance versions, whereas the Camaro and Mustang, you can daily drive them, but they're not as daily driver friendly. So I think that's the reason why the Challenger is passing those two up in sales, even though it's a very old car at this point. And then in terms of EV sales, this is where Tesla obviously led. In the US, they sold 313,000 cars, which was up 66%. And like I said, worldwide, Tesla sold almost 1 million cars. Ford was next, 27,000, and then GM sold 24,000. So GM was actually up in EV sales this year. And like I said, I think a big part of that is if there was stuff available, people were just buying it up. Because I remember before COVID, with like the Bolts, for example, they would sit on dealer lots for quite some time, whereas now they're just, I mean, obviously there was that recall on them, but like they were pretty much just selling left and right, which was pretty crazy. And then the next interesting one is going to be large SUVs. Now this is like a very broad category. I think it's kind of interesting how they have this set up. But this basically contains pretty much just anything bigger than like a Toyota RAV4 is pretty much in this category. So the vehicles that are in this category that did really well is the Chevy Tahoe, was actually up 20%, and obviously we have the new body style with the Tahoe, and then also with the Yukon. The Yukon was up 33% in sales, and those vehicles have done really well because the new body style just looks really nice. The interior is significantly nicer as well, and then on top of that, there's just so many different powertrain options, and then there's so many different aesthetic packages on the outside. Like you can get anything from like a luxury exterior to an off-road package with like the AT4, and then also with the Z71. So those did really well. The next one that did really well was another one from Chevy, which is the Suburban, which is just the longer wheelbase, up 28%. So that's not too surprising. The one that's interesting for me to see is the Jeep the Jeep Wagoneer, and then also the Ford Bronco. So the Jeep Wagoneer, I can kind of give it, they sold only 5,300 units, not 53. I can give them a little bit of slack because it took them a while to get that car to market, and I'm sure 2022 will be a much stronger year for the Wagoneer. But the one that's interesting is the Ford Bronco. 35,000 units for 2021 and this is the full-size Bronco. This isn't the Bronco Sport. This is the full-size Bronco. And it's kind of interesting to see. Then we were able to get 35,000 units because there are so many pre-orders on the Bronco. And so what this really shows us is, Ford's ability to produce the new Bronco is not all that great right now. It'll slowly increase over time, but that means this is just going to be a very limited availability vehicle for quite some time. And then another interesting one is with the Bronco Sport. This actually outsold, and this is different vehicle, right? This is not full-size SUVs or large SUVs. But the Bronco Sport sold over 108,000 units. And so the Bronco Sport is actually more popular than the Bronco, even though it's not at the same time, because there's far more people that pre-ordered a Bronco than they did a Bronco Sport. But Ford's able to produce the Bronco Sport in much higher numbers because it's just a reskinned Ford Escape. And then the Maverick, 13,000 units. This one is pretty interesting to me as well. The reason being is Ford was kind of late to the market with the Maverick, getting it out in 2021. And so the fact they're able to sell that many that quick just shows the popularity of that truck. I bet they're going to sell at least 100,000 units for 2022. I would guarantee that pretty much. And then in terms of like smaller cars, the thing that I think is the most interesting here is the numbers from Kia, Hyundai, and Nissan. They all went up massive amounts. The Sentra, 35%, the Elantra, 18%, and then the Kia Forte up 36%. And, you know, compared to Honda and Toyota with the Civic and the Corolla, the Civic was only up 1%, the Corolla was only up 5%. So in a year where gas prices just absolutely skyrocketed and people are going to move towards more affordable cars, they weren't buying from Honda and Toyota as much. They were buying from Nissan, Hyundai, and Kia a lot more. So it's pretty interesting. Even though Honda and Toyota still sold more cars overall, the increase wasn't as much as the demand. So again, like I said, people buying whatever is available at this point in that, and I feel like the numbers pretty much support it, right? Is people just buying what's out on the market. And so what this, like I said, I've kind of put my thoughts throughout this video, but what this really means in my mind is that, like I said in previous videos, is 2022 is still going to be kind of on the mend. There's still going to be availability issues, and the automakers that can figure it out are going to figure it out, and people are just going to buy whatever is available. And so it'll be interesting to see what the sales numbers end up being. But yeah, Toyota absolutely killed it, and it makes sense that they killed it because, again, simplicity with their company, right? With their vehicles as well. They don't need as much from a microchip perspective as other manufacturers because their vehicles, you know, people complain about them being outdated and everything, but then it's like, well, their vehicles being so outdated helped them sell more vehicles because they were able to actually produce more, which, yeah, ended up helping things out long term. But anyways, that's going to sum things up for today's video. I want you guys to let me know kind of what you think about all these statistics. I think it's super interesting, and it's going to be really interesting to see what happens moving forward with vehicle sales in 2022. My prediction is I think that Ford and GM are going to get a little bit of their share back, but I think it's going to be quite a few years before they can fully kind of recover from all of this. But I'll see you guys.